after, we're at the end of the summer. It's still summer here. I think it's interesting to have a look at the airline sector.
Yes, because one company came with figures yesterday.
Boeing came with figures. They were dramatic.
So we will talk about the sector. We're not going to talk about. We decided not to talk about the figures of Google, Alphabet.
No,
and the figures
we
of
could
Netflix.
do it, but I think they're
There's
very
so much
highlighted.
Yeah. And I think that's not new for investors. And we try to talk about the sector.
Yes.
So the sector is aviation, and the subject you're going to talk about the companies that make the planes.
Yes.
And I'm going to talk about
that buy the planes.
Yeah, and fly with the planes. But first, Martin, we both love history. And we talked about the history of coffee in the past and the history of
drinks,
booze last week. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the aviation. The first flight with a person, a commercial flight, was in 1913. That was more than 100 years ago. And it's still celebrated every year. And that was a funny plane because it was a plane that took off from St. Petersburg.
Not in Russia.
Not in Russia, in Florida. I didn't know that Florida also had a St. Petersburg.
Now you pronounce it as St. Petersburg. Yes, I know there's one in Florida.
And it was the Benoist airboat, and there was a lot of water. Still, I think there's a lot of water in St. Petersburg, so they didn't have a lot of space to get up. Yeah, so they used the water. It was a boat, and they had two types of planes. That was the airboat 43 and 45. And the 43 could carry a pilot and one person. And the 45, you could travel with two persons. So if you were married and you wanted to
take your wife.
Yeah, you had to take two flights, or you had to take the 45.
Yeah.
And the first flight was in December of 1913, and it was a flight to Tampa, and it was 22 minutes.
I'm going to look it up. There must be some information.
Yeah. And it's really funny, and it's not so funny, is that his name, that the pilot, that was Tony Janus. And they raised, with the company, was an investor behind, they raised $4,300 for the company. There was one investor, he put down more than $1,000, and then they were 11 investors with each $100, and then there was some, and then they raised with the 4,300. They had the first commercial flight. It was all official. And Janus unfortunately died in the First World War
in a plane crash.
And no, in a fight, and he was training Russian pilots. But still, every year he will be, how do you say it? They will think about him, and they will celebrate the first commercial flight. But
they celebrated for that.
Yeah,
not that he was training Russian pilots.
No. No, but it's of course funny that you see that the first company was raised with 4,300 money. Again, inflation. Were the same dollars?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay, so the industry had huge problems, of course, in COVID year 2020.
Yeah, it was dramatic.
The stocks went down a lot,
and then they
recovered. You see the airline companies. I'm not going to talk about the chart, what happened this year and last year, but you can look it up and you see big differences. Some companies already recovered until the almost the same level as before COVID, and some not. So we're not going to talk about it, but the industry itself, they had big losses in 2020, minus 137 billion. Last year, minus 42 billion, and they expect this year only around 8 billion euros. And the total revenues will be around 780, and the total cost $790 billion for the whole industry.
So still not profitable.
No, but compared to the last years and 2023, because we always look as investors what's coming up, and they expect a good profitable sector, and the highest profits will come from Northern America companies. So later on, I will take a look at the 6 important airline companies from North America. So there's not only the US, but it's North America. So the industry is recovering. The outlook is very good, but of course, if something happens with COVID or the war developed even worse, then everything, when there will be a recession, and it will last for a long time, of course, then you have to adapt the estimations. But with the knowledge that we have now, is it a sector that will grow next year?
Yes.
And there are only how many different planes are there in the world?
At the moment, there's about, there's many different sorts of planes, smaller planes, but the ones that you and I will take when we go to Malaga is or an Airbus or a Boeing. Well, he had maybe one time the
I got
Embraer.
to take the car when I got
The
to Malaga.
Embraer, remember that? And you had this one plane that had the engines at the back of the tail. I flew in that one also a couple of times. I don't know which one it was. They had the Fokker in the past in the Netherlands, but they are not there anymore. Concorde, yeah. It's actually funny that never a new Concorde sort of came out now with all the technology.
They have plans to come.
I know, but now with everything that's possible, you can think, okay, it's more easy now than in the 80s to take a plane in 2 hours to New York. No? Yeah. So, two companies, they're quite different. Boeing is founded 2 years or 3 years after this guy Janus took his first plane, 1916. Boeing came to the stock market in 1962 for 80. Really? And I just said, I wish my father had bought the stocks when he was 10 years old. Because I bought them at 80 cents. In the moment they're trading at 135. The highest price Boeing was trading at was in 2019 before COVID at $380. So we're $250 below the highest point. At this moment, if you look at what the market is thinking about Boeing, the expectations, they think about it will go back up, Wall Street, in a year's time to 198. So they give 43% upside potential. But there's some interesting things about the two companies. First of all, what's the difference? I mean, first of all, Boeing is much older. Boeing is almost 100 years old, and Airbus is from the 70s when you were born.
This is from the late 70s.
It's from the early 70s.
Then I can't remember.
No, you can't remember. But Airbus at the moment trading at 105 euros on the stock market of Paris. The lowest point you could pick it up in COVID, March 2020, was 16 euros. 16. So it went up 84 euros in that 2 years' time. So
percentage-wise, quite.
Yeah, market cap-wise, they're sort of like the same. 82 billion for both Boeing and Airbus. The price target of Airbus, however, is less exciting. It's only about 25% from current prices in a year's time. But there is something important which I want to tell you. The biggest difference is that Boeings are having the joystick, like you said, it's called yoke actually. I'm saying joystick. The yokey is in the middle, and with Airbus, they're flying on the side. So that is the biggest difference. And Boeing keeps that in the middle because they think that is how planes are meant to be.
And engines-wise, it's similar?
Yeah, you have slightly differences, like the Boeings are more pointy and the Airbuses are more round, and then the tails, the Airbuses are going more narrowing at the end, and Boeing is like this, it's slightly little things, difference in design, because at the end of the day it's a tube, right? You can't do so much.
Yeah, if you look them from a distance, they look the same.
Are you, when this Boeing issue was with the 737 MAX, did you watch, or you don't even think about it? You just step in it. Yeah. I remember that when I took a plane, and I said, I hope it's not a 737 MAX, honestly. And then we know somebody, a pilot, right? And I asked him, what do you think about it? So it's still it's the safest transport vehicle in the world that you can take.
So many checks.
Yeah, there's 19 million flights a year. I mean, of course, much more people taking a car, but if you look at those 19 million flights, so little things happen, and so many things are checked. Yeah. If you look at who's carrying those flights, is that Boeing or is that Airbus? It's almost 50-50. So half of the flights are Boeing, half of the flights are Airbus. In 2021, last year, Airbus was definitely the winner. They delivered 611 new planes, because that's always the competition. Who is delivering the most amount of new planes? Because that's when they get the most of the money paid.
And the margin on the plane, is it similar?
What they make on a plane?
Yeah, for both companies.
Well, the profit margin on Boeing at the moment is negative. So for each dollar they make, they lose money. How inflation.
Yeah, but the inflation is the same for Airbus.
Yeah, but there might be more. We talked about it before, right? The efficiency of US.
Company one. Oh, okay.
And the efficiency of in Europe. I think the Europeans might be more efficient. And I'm not there to say, but that's my first thought. Yeah. Sometimes you have to think simple, and I like to do that.
And we can't estimate, can't investigate everything.
But at the moment, it is very clear that Boeing has a very not a good-looking profit margin. Yeah. They nearly don't make any money. Do we look at the interest coverage, because we're living in times with very high interest rates, and there's an interest coverage ratio that gives a very good indication on the ability of a company to pay off your debts. And if that is below 1, you should worry if you hold stocks of that company. I'll tell you this much: Boeing at the moment is at 1.19. So
but that explains probably why they don't make a profit,
because they probably are very high in debt.
The cost of their of the money is of the capital,
especially
is too high.
If you compare that to Airbus, because they have 12.8, which is actually quite decent. So it's interesting what's going on here. So all in all, I think price earnings, I didn't really take it in consideration because Boeing is losing money, so you can't compare it. So I think you need to look in this case fundamentally a little bit further down the line. What is going on here? And then I saw that all the ratios say, where's the biggest difference? Market cap the same, this the same, this the same. Hey, interest coverage, there's a big difference.
Yeah.
Boeing almost at 1, Airbus almost at 30.
And ECB increased the interest rate to 75 basis points this week. So
yeah, you look at it, say this: if Airbus has more debt outstanding or variable interest rates, they will be having a higher cost at the moment, or they have to bring out a new loan. But at this moment, they're
no. But if a loan is always temporarily, so if they have to take a new one, it's always higher. So they can come in real problems.
Exactly. The thing is that it's what you can read from this, and that's something that I think the viewer has to take from my part of this video, is that this interest coverage ratio just tells you whether the financial health of the company is good or not. So if what you're saying, if they have to bring out a new loan, Boeing will have to do a much better job to convince investors to put money in than Airbus at the moment. Yeah. Because bond buyers or institutional players that buy these bonds, they look very much at this interest coverage rate. So who's the winner at the moment? Definitely Airbus. Okay. I'm not saying that you should buy it, but from this sector, both these companies, Airbus is clearly fundamentally more interesting stock.
You have very good arguments for it. It's quite strange, because you have only 2 builders. That is strange, and in between, the amount normally of planes that deliver is the same. But if you look at the company, there are huge problems.
I saw one thing, by the way, today about talking about builders, that Russia has said that they're going to stop buying any more Airbuses, any more Boeings. They're going to build everything
for themselves
nationally.
Okay, now
Russian
good luck.
Good luck. Yeah. Yes, for the moment, I'm not flying, but Russian Airlines. Suicide.
Which airlines should you take then? I said before, I had a look at the North American airlines, 6 airline companies, and I also looked at the chart, what they did 10 years before COVID, so 10 years before the start of 2020. And the S&P 500 gained in that period 187%, and all companies performed better on the stock market. The worst one performed 230% positive, and the best one 650%. Wow. So what you can say, in a normal time, those companies, that sector is outperforming the S&P 500.
Yeah.
I think you can say
you can say it's clearly, you can see the chart here.
So what I also said, the industry is recovering.
Very spiky, eh?
Yeah.
But if you compare it,
but also
what is
big
the nicest
differences.
investment for your peace of mind, I would say to buy the S&P,
yeah? And what I said before, the sector is growing again, and especially in North America. So this could be an area that's interesting for investors. So what I did, so you couldn't compare price earnings because one company was not earning anything. I looked at those 6 companies. What is the price earning for this year, based on the estimated earnings for this year, or half is estimated, half not. Yeah. Then you look at the best one is Alaska Air Group, and we put it in the screen. They have around a price earning of 10, and the highest one is United Airlines. They have around 22, but still both lower than your 24 of not your, but Airbus. And what you also see, and that is also in line with the expectation of the growing market of next year, is that the profits next year will be much higher for all those companies than for 2022. The last 2, they don't make a profit, and it's expected that they make a profit next year. So I didn't take them into consideration because they may also make a loss. The same as you did.
Yeah.
And then you see they're all increasing in profit, so the price earning is even lower. And how low the price earning, how better
it is.
Yeah. I made a little column in which I said, what's the delta? For example,
the delta, you mean the change, right?
The change of the profit per share. If you look, for example, at Alaska, they will have a profit of $4.4 per share. Next year it will be 5. That's an increasement of 13%. That's not too much. If you compare that, for example, with United Airlines, they have a profit per share of $1.93. Yeah. Next year it is estimated it will be 5.8. So that's an increasement of 200%. So if you look, to conclude, They all have the one that making a profit this year. The 4 of the top, they all have a really nice price earnings, even better next year. And if you take the consideration into, if you take the delta into consideration, and you're looking at the ones that don't need to grow so much, then you can say Alaska Air Group is a really interesting company to follow.
And to finish off with now, because today I also saw when doing this homework, preparing this video, Alaska Airline just placed the largest order at Boeing.
I didn't know that. I really didn't. Is it true?
Yeah, it's true, yeah. I forgot to mention it before, but it's so it's
the circle is round.
Circle is round. Yeah.
Interesting subsector. I
Absolutely,
think. Thank you. I found it interesting, and I hope you also found it. So give us your thumb.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.